And now it's time for today's big question. I want you to imagine that you are an ordinary person living an ordinary life in an ordinary city. Then one day your city is attacked by a ferocious dragon. People run in terror, hiding in their homes as the dragon flies overhead, breathing fire and generally wreaking havoc. You peek out of your window and see the dragon land in the town square. It seems to be injured. Its wing is on fire and it's clearly in a lot of pain. Do you A. stay in your house and hope the dragon doesn't notice you? B. Grab a bucket of water and try to put out the fire? Or C. Run outside, grab the dragon by its tail and beat it with a stick until it dies? You may think that none of these options are very appealing. Maybe you'd rather die by dragon fire than get anywhere near that beast. But what about option C? The idea of grabbing a dragon by the tail and beating it to death might seem crazy, but according to Atlas, that's exactly what he did. Atlas was an ordinary guy living an extraordinary life in ancient Greece around 600 BC. One day, while he was working as a metal scraper, his peaceful life was shattered when a huge monster descended from the sky. It had the body of a lion, the wings and head of an eagle, and it was breathing fire. People panicked and ran for the hills, except Atlas, while everyone else was fleeing. Atlas grabbed a nearby spear and charged at the monster. When he got close enough, he poked the beast in the eye. Naturally, this made the monster very angry, so it bit him. But Atlas held on and somehow managed to climb inside its mouth. Once he was in, he started poking the monster's throat with his spear, until it choked to death. Apparently, the monster was some kind of demigod, because after it died, it turned into a really handsome young man. And to reward Atlas's bravery, Zeus made him immortal. To the people of ancient Greece, Atlas was a true hero. But how much of this story is actually true? Well, like all good mythology, it's impossible to separate fact from fiction. But what we do know is that Atlas was probably a real person who did battle with a real monster. The monster in question is usually identified with the Roman monster Typhon or the Greek monster Typhon. And unlike Atlas, Typhon was definitely a figment of someone's imagination. He was huge, like the size of a mountain huge. He had 100 heads, each one capable of breathing fire and a truly terrifying voice that could destroy entire cities. So if Atlas really did fight and kill such a creature, that would make him a pretty big deal. But there are two problems with that theory. First, nobody knows where Atlas got the strength to fight a monster that was literally the personification of raw natural power. Even the gods were afraid of Typhon. So how could a mere mortal man stand up to him, let alone win against him? Second, there isn't any physical evidence that a battle between Atlas and Typhon ever took place. We don't have any contemporary written accounts or archaeological evidence. The earliest written account of Atlas's heroism comes from the Greek poet Hesiod, and he wrote it about 2,000 years after the supposed battle. So was Atlas really a hero? Or is this just another case of Greeks explaining stuff that they didn't understand by making stuff up? Well, either way, the story of Atlas and the monster has inspired a number of later stories and myths. Like there's that Italian tale about a giant named Antaeus who fought with Hercules, or the story of the Danish prince Cephas who killed a monster with a rock and then accidentally killed his own father. Or the time that Thor went to Utgard, a place where everyone was super strong and super skilled. But maybe those are all just coincidences. The truth is, we don't know much about Atlas. He's not mentioned in Homer's Iliad or Odyssey, and there are very few surviving artifacts that mention him. Most of what we know about him comes from fragments of other people's stories. In most of those stories, he plays the role of a victim, like in the myth about how he held up the sky for the gods, or in the myth about how he gave mankind the gift of fire only to have it stolen by Prometheus. There are a few stories where he gets to be the hero, like in the myth about how he rescued Hesione from a sea monster, or in the myth about how he saved the city of Miletus from a terrible drought. But even in those stories, Atlas isn't really the main character. For more on the many lives of Atlas, check out the series in the description below. In the end, Atlas might have been a real person who did heroic things, or he might have been a figment of someone's imagination. But whether he was real or not, he inspired other people to be better, braver versions of themselves. And to me, that's the real definition of a hero. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, consider liking and subscribing. It helps us bring you new episodes every week.